Thank you, Claire, for that kind introduction. I wasn't expecting the music to come blaring out. That was an unexpected treat. And look, as Claire mentioned, Lucy Rigby, who indeed features in the brochure that you all have on your table, such was the last minute change, was due to speak today as the Economic Secretary and City Minister, but having been promoted to Chief Secretary, is not able to be here with us today. And indeed, with a financial services bill having just been introduced to Parliament in the last few days, our new Economic Secretary in Rachel Blake is going through her own skills journey at the moment as she is learning all things financial services legislation locked away in the Treasury. So unfortunately, her schedule didn't allow her to be here today. You therefore have me as the understudy, but I'll do my best to take the lead role on this occasion. So why is financial services skills so important to the government? Well, look, financial services is central to delivering growth across the economy. It's a leading expert. It plays a critical role in channeling capital to the households, businesses, and the wider economy that will drive future growth. And the government's industrial strategy recognises that the continued success of the financial services sector is not only vital for an important part of our economy, but is integral to productivity and growth across the economy, raising living standards in an increasingly uncertain world. And the chance has been clear that in a more volatile global environment, our approach must be anchored in what she calls securonomics, a strategy built on stability, investment and reform, and therefore continuing to secure the UK's position as a leading global financial centre is not just an end in itself, but a means of delivering long-term resilient prosperity across the UK. And that was central to the growth and competitiveness strategy that was published last year. And within that, the financial services skills agenda was central to ensuring that our sector has the people it needs to take that forward. And so I'd like to start by thanking the Financial Services Skills Commission for the outstanding work they've done in delivering the first part of their new report, A Workforce Transformed, Technology, Skills and the Future of Work in Financial Services. And I should also thank those who worked with the FSSC and contributed to the significant programme of research, so particularly Lloyds Banking Group, PwC, the City of London Corporation and the City UK. As the panel before was just discussing, it's a given that disruptive technologies like AI are transforming our economy and our society. The FSSC's first report advances our collective understanding of what that technology transformation could mean in practice for one of the UK's most innovative, complex and competitive sectors and for the people who work within it. The firms I talk to consistently cite the quality and diversity of the UK workforce as a source of global advantage. Highly skilled people employed in financial services across all nations and regions of the UK underpin investment, innovation and trade. The UK already has world-class strengths to build on: deep capital markets, respected institutions, leading universities. But, like many jurisdictions, we face clear challenges as technology reshapes our financial services and as global competition intensifies, productivity-driven growth will depend on three things: investment, innovation, and the effective deployment of people and skills. The roles in the financial services sector are increasingly highly skilled. Occupations are changing faster than traditional training cycles can keep pace with, and firms are competing globally for the same scarce capabilities. If the UK is to remain a destination of choice for financial services, we must ensure our skills system works with industry, not around it. It must be flexible, responsive, and focused on outcomes. And that is why our skills system needs to reflect the realities of a modern, dynamic economy. And it is unsurprising that the need for upskilling and reskilling is a priority for employers in the financial services sector. Government cannot and should not try to micromanage this transition, but through close dialogue with the sector, we can help to identify the conditions for your success. The pace of technology change means that skills can no longer be treated as something acquired once at the outset of a career. They must be continuously refreshed, and the government strongly supports UK industry embedding a culture of lifelong learning and development. This is particularly true in sectors like financial services, where new technologies are changing not just tools, but decision-making, governments, and customer interactions. We welcome more detailed analysis on the significance of training that is more modular, targeted, and accessible to those already in the workplace. We also welcome further insight into what is needed to support leadership capability so firms can adapt new technologies responsibly and at pace, and indeed this was something that was touched on at the end of the last panel. The government is invested in attracting the next generation of talent too. Entry-level pathways into financial services matter deeply, not only for fairness and social mobility, but for long-term resilience. As roles evolve, we must ensure that young people can still access the sector, even as traditional career routes change. This means closer collaboration between employers, education providers and government to shape transition into work for young people that are viable and scalable for business. And it means ensuring that regional talent pools are not overlooked so that opportunity is spread across the whole of the UK. Employers are best placed to understand emerging skills needs. Government's role is to listen, convene and align, ensuring that business insights are reflected in policy decisions and system design. The issues come in especially sharp focus when we consider the impact of disruptive technologies and the opportunities and challenges they bring. Artificial intelligence, automation, data-driven tools are no longer experimental in financial services. They are increasingly central to how firms operate, compete and grow. That is why the Treasury commissioned the FSSC to produce research on how the skills system can drive growth and productivity in financial services through the adoption of AI and disruptive technologies. We're delighted that the first report is being launched here today. The research provides a clear and rigorous assessment of how business operations and the workforce are likely to change over the coming decade. And although the pace and scale of impact will vary by firm and by sector, the direction of change is unmistakable. AI is becoming embedded across all parts of the business, shaping how work is organised, how decisions are made, how value is delivered to customers. It is not simply automating isolated tasks, but transforming end-to-end business models, governance structures, and professional judgment. The opportunity is significant. Even when adopted well, these technologies can boost productivity, improve customer outcomes, widen access to service, and support growth in new markets. But today's report is also clear that technology alone is not enough. Success will depend on leadership capability, workforce confidence, high-quality data and modern systems, robust governments, and perhaps most crucially in financial services, customer trust. Where these foundations are in place, the growth dividends could be substantial. Where they are absent, we risk not reaching our potential. For government, perhaps the most important message from the research is that this is a whole workforce transition. The impact of AI will not be confined to specialist roles or technology teams. It will affect every job family and every level of seniority. This will require significant upskilling and reskilling as tasks, responsibilities and decision-making evolve. We do not underestimate the careful attention that must be paid to ethics, accountability and risk management as well. And indeed, this is something that we are considering within the Treasury itself as it transforms the way we work. The report rightly highlights the implications for entry-level roles and future talent pipelines, which face disruption as traditional pathways are reshaped. And it underlines the importance of place. This transition will be felt differently across the nations, regions, and indeed overseas territories that I know are represented here today. It reinforces the need for a responsive, inclusive skills system that supports people through change. The government is determined to ensure that the UK's financial services sector is at the forefront of this transformation. That brings me finally to the role of industry leadership. In the Financial Services Growth and Competitiveness Strategy, the Treasury committed to sponsoring not one, but 2 skills projects. Alternatively, you could say that the FSSC kindly agreed to take on not 1, but 2 large pieces of additional work. Thanks, Mark and Claire. The first of these is the report, the first stage of which is launched today. And the second is the Financial Services Skills Compact. We believe both are excellent examples of collaboration between government and industry. Later this year, we are aiming to take an important next step with the launch of the Skills Compact, which will set out targeted, meaningful, and ambitious measures for signatories to address skills gaps. The steering group has been working on this for nearly a year, and indeed I see some familiar faces in the room here today from that work. We urge firms across the sector, both large and small, to engage with the FSSC and to consider signing up to the Skills Compact. And the government will play its part as a long-term partner and enabler. Success will ultimately depend on collaboration and the breadth and depth of industry engagement. So let me close by thanking the FSSC once again for their leadership and the analysis underpinning today's report. A workforce transformed provides a strong evidence base for how skills, technology, and productivity intersect in financial services. The task now is to turn that insight into action, and we look forward to the final report informing how government can continue to work in partnership with industry to build a resilient, highly skilled financial services workforce that can take full advantage of the opportunities of AI and other disruptive technologies. Thank you.
Okay, so now it's opportunity for me to ask around some questions. There's also an opportunity for us to answer audience questions. On this case, it'd be great if you just put them in the app. I've got the iPad here. At the moment it says there are no questions. So that's a bit of an encouragement to type a few in whilst we're talking. And Rohan, what I want to do is perhaps start off by unpacking some of the things you talked about in your remarks. And before I do that, though, can I just say a big thank you to you and your team. You talked about it's been a long-term partnership between the sector and government. I certainly would feel that over the course of the last year or so, as we worked through ideas around the compact and the report on AI, we've built that foundation actually of a really strong relationship. I'm very grateful for the work that you and your team have led on that over the last year. So thank you for that. I think I just want to start and perhaps zoom back out from skills to just talk a little bit about, or ask you a bit more about the Chancellor's vision for financial services. I think one of the things that I'd observe is over the lifetime of this government has actually been the Chancellor's support for the financial services sector, and very much listening to the views of financial services shaping the regulatory agenda. But could you just talk about what you see the Chancellor's vision of financial services being?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, Mark, and I guess to situate it within the wider government industrial strategy, which is when the government came in, they identified 8 key sectors across the economy. I won't try and name all 8 of them today, but financial services, because of its unique position, was identified as one of the key 8, and that is because it is both a large sector in its own right, 10% of the UK economy, but because it plays such an important role in driving growth across the economy through households, through businesses, and the like. But also, I think a really important part of that is its employment and the people that work within it across the City of London, where we are today, but of course across the regions and nations of the UK. And so that is why the government has tried to really put its weight behind the financial services sector and think about how can it support its continued growth and prosperity.
And it is quite a change of approach, isn't it? Because I think historically both the financial service sector say we can stand up on our own 2 feet and we don't need the government, and the government historically had been a bit reticent about having financial services as part of an industrial strategy. What do you think to change that dial?
Well, look, I think understanding the important work that happens in communities and regions across the country is a really important part. And look, there's no doubt that it was a particularly challenging period, as you would know, in the aftermath of the financial crisis, to make the case to the UK population on the benefits of a large financial centre being in the UK. But I think hopefully we have seen that evolution since then, that while lessons needed to be learned, actually, a large financial sector providing good, rewarding jobs and skills across our economy is a benefit to the UK.
Okay, we're talking about jobs and skills, and clearly, as you mentioned in your remarks, when the Treasury published the Growth and Competitiveness strategy, there was very much a strong skills element in there. What do you think the role is of skills in creating and maintaining the UK as a vibrant financial services centre?
Well, look, it's quite interesting. In my job, I do quite a lot of travel, engaging with with various jurisdictions around the world, thinking about how do we ensure the UK's ongoing competitiveness. And it doesn't matter where you go in the world, what firms talk about is the ability to access talent within the UK. And so it's vitally important that we continue to keep that at the forefront, and that we continue to take the steps necessary, both from an industry point of view, but from a government point of view, to collaborate and think about the journey. And that's why the government has been so keen to support the Skills Commission and the work of the Skills Commission to take that forward.
Yeah, you talked about the nations and regions. I think one of the things that we did in the course of this report is we did a number of round tables. We're in Belfast, Edinburgh, Cardiff, Leeds, Manchester and Birmingham, I think. And it was great to actually be out there and talk to firms on the ground. Just what do you, how do you see this interaction between the strategy and regional and national growth around financial services?
Yeah, look, it's a really interesting question. For those who haven't looked through the report, and perhaps this shows how in a room full of skills professionals, shows how I like to learn, is that some of the pictures in the document stood out to me the most. There's an excellent map of the UK in the document that talks about the impact of disruptive technology across the regions and how they may be impacted differently, which really brings it out to me. I guess in terms of the collaboration, and something that you and I have discussed previously, Mark, is the cluster effects of universities pairing with major financial institutions and creating those types of pathways. And so it's fantastic to see that happening organically. I guess there's a question the extent to which central government or regional governments can help support that agenda, because I think it's really interesting, and it shows that we hear from major international financial institutions that they've picked Manchester or Birmingham or wherever it might be because of the links to the university, because they can get that skills pipeline coming through. And so the more government can support that, the better.
Yeah, and I think that's something that when we come to the next phase of our report, I think we need to look at more, because there is that strong appetite from member firms, and it's very much linked, as you indicated, to inward investment, about how do you sort of find those pockets of deep skills that you can tap into. And I think particularly as, I think one of the themes that comes out in the report is the increase in skill levels in financial services. Some of those skills will become more and more sophisticated. So actually that pipeline from school, further education, sixth form colleges, universities into the sector, I think becomes really important as we require higher and higher levels of skills. I think we'll come back to that in phase two. I think one of the things that has been interesting, just in the way the Treasury has embraced AI, not just in how you do your jobs, but actually was the appointment of AI champions in January this year. Could you say a little bit about what was the thinking behind that, and what sort of early signs are you seeing?
Yeah, and look, it's a really we're starting to use champions more and more across government in a number of areas, and the reason that is beneficial is, of course, trying to work collaboratively with the sector is so important on some of these issues, and hearing firsthand from practitioners what are the issues. The AI champions are due to report in the coming weeks. For those watching the Financial Services Diary, the Chancellor's Mansion House is coming up in July this year, and so we're expecting more from those.
Any date in July, Rohan, you might share with us?
I think we're saying middle of July is the anticipated date. And so, look, the AI champions, their job is to be out there convening within the sector and reporting back to government on what steps we should be taking more broadly. I get what has been interesting, and I mentioned trust, consumer trust briefly in my speech, is one of the things we are seeing is, and hearing from firms is, AI being used for back office functions and internal functions, and slightly more tentative steps in terms of some of the customer facing activity. And so it'll be interesting to see whether their report touches on some of those issues and how we make sure that firms feel they can use it to the full potential in terms of customer interactions as well.
Yes, because I think there's, I talk to firms who think about that, the use of AI and its application to customer data to really sort of power the customer relationship. And I think we've heard it both in a couple of sessions that we've had today in conversations with our members about how, for example, AI can sort of transform the roles of people in call centres from very sort of process-driven relationship with customers to much more value-added.
Yes.
But I think trying to think through the governance and the guardrails.
That's right.
Around that. And I know the government and the FCA have been working on targeted support and changes to the advice boundary along this.
Well, I was going to mention, targeted support is an excellent example where, where firms can do more to help their customers and creating that space within the regulatory perimeter, but in a part that is in response to some of the AI providers that are out there, where where customers can plug their data into an unregulated entity and get answers on what they should do. And so, the government and the regulators' response to that is to make sure that there is a safe space within the regulatory perimeter for customers to get that advice, making the most of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really sort of powerful way in which that partnership between government, regulated industry can work to produce better outcomes for consumers. Rohan, you very kindly gave a plug to the Compact earlier, for which we're grateful. Could you this is one of the questions that came in on the iPad. As government industry move into the next phase of the Skills Compact, what specific commitments or behaviours does the Treasury most need from industry partners?
Gosh, I wouldn't want to preempt the conclusion of your work on the Compact, mate. I think look, when we've had conversations within the steering group, it is about tangible commitments to move forward within the sector, but it is also not, the government is not trying to. There's no trick here in terms of trying to catch out the industry, and so I think what we hope is that there's a genuine open commitment to move forward collectively and striking a balance between what industry can do off its own bat and what support you need from the sector. And I think this is all about making sure that the financial services sector is really at the forefront of this innovation that is happening and making the most of it and making sure that it is central to the skills journey that needs to happen as this technology evolves. And that's exactly the point of the report that's been published today.
Absolutely, and I think there's something here, isn't there, about how we use the Compact, not just to think about driving the sector's growth, but also about our relationship with our employees as well, and thinking about how do we make sure the sector works for everyone in these commitments. Yeah, and
I mean just to add, I think the reskilling element is particularly important within the financial services sector. Something that comes up with government all the time is the move away from bank branches, and you mentioned call centres. Yeah. The way in which customers are interacting with their banks is evolving at a dramatic pace, and so how do the skills need to change to deal with that dramatic change?
Absolutely, absolutely. You talked about data just now, and I just wonder, one of the areas that we are talking about at the moment is around sort of open data, and so think about sort of the evolution of things like open banking, and how we're able to use wider data sets in order to power the growth of financial services. Can you say a bit about the Treasury's view around that?
Well, look, it is something that it's been a bit of a slow burn, but it is something that we've worked on for a number of years. And I think, going back a decade or so, if you'll forgive me, there was initial conversation about who owns a customer's banking data. Does the bank own it, or does the customer own it? Now, what open banking determines, it is the customer's data, and so it enables them to make better informed financial decisions, to create competition in the market, and so it's been a really important transformation that the government has looked to support. But I think one of the things where we are grappling with within the Treasury, and no doubt the sector is grappling with as well, is the massive wave of technological innovation that is happening, both from AI, but I was at a discussion this morning on crypto assets and transformation of digital markets. And so how does the Treasury work with the sector on this waterfront of technological change that is coming, both in terms of skills but also in terms of the regulatory framework, and what do we need to do to make sure the UK continues to be at the forefront of this innovation that's happening?
Yeah, and I think one of the aspects of the report, and we talk quite a lot about AI, is, of course, we have looked at other disruptive technologies like blockchain and quantum. So we're very conscious from a skills perspective of that broader waterfront, as well as the regulatory side. I got one last question. We could spend all day on the questions on the iPad. There's one last question I want to come to, and you touched on it in one of your answers earlier. I'm just interested. One of the things that I think is important for the sector to do is to learn from how others are going through this process. And there was a question here about, so how is the government and civil service adopting AI skills? Perhaps you could talk a little bit about what's happening in the Treasury to make you all more AI literate, or fluent, or native, which way you want to position yourself.
Well, look, I suspect we are a little bit further behind in our journey, but we are. But we're on our way. I mean, as you may remember, Mark, we got a lot of correspondence that comes through the Treasury Department. So a lot of routine tasks, letter writing, that sort of thing. And what we're thinking about is, well, how do we adapt our systems to make sure that some of those more routine processes are dealt with as efficiently. But of course, as I think the panel just before us was touching on, but how do you make sure there's appropriate oversight? How do you make sure there's quality assurance? And I spent the early part of my career drafting many of those letters. That's how do I know what good looks like? It's because I've written them myself. And so, like other industries, the Treasury is thinking about, well, how do we make sure our middle management have the skills and the judgments needed to properly quality assure what the AI produces. I think there's an interesting, again, another graphic in the report, just to reinforce how I like to memorise things, and something we've talked about in the past, Mark. The diamond-shaped workforce from the pyramid, and how the diamond is sort of already here, and indeed that's something the Treasury is sort of grappling with. How do we think about our recruitment and our staffing model in a world where the shape of the organisation is more diamond than pyramid? And so I think we're in a very similar place.
And I think it's one of the great things, actually, and I think something we're going to focus on in the next stage of the report, is how do we draw experiences from other sectors, and that may be people like Mark, who's moved in to financial services from a range of other industries, but how do we work and see how others are grappling with these challenges? Because I think that's one of the ways in which we can accelerate our own development over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. Rohan, thank you very much for standing in so well and stepping up and replacing Lucy today. And thank you very much for your answers to the questions. That's great. Everyone, thank Rohan.